Well, hello, villagers here and those watching at home on LVTV. Welcome to our town hall meeting on our new governing documents. I'd also like to say hello to those who will watch this at a later time. This entire presentation will be replayed on LVTV on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the next 2 weeks. In addition, we're hoping to have a video available on our website soon. That's leisurevillage.org, so you can watch it at your convenience. In the back of the room, we have sign-up sheets for anybody who might want to see this presentation in a smaller setting and on video at a later time, at a date to be announced. If you have any questions, please fill out a card and raise your hand. Your card will be collected and your question will be answered. If you're home and you have a question, you may email it to townhall@leisurevillage.org. That's townhall@leisurevillage.org, one word, and we'll do our best to answer them as well. And now for the best news of all. My part is done. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jeff Beaumont, our association's attorney, who'll take this meeting the rest of the way. Please welcome Jeff Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr. Revelis. Good evening, everybody. So I wanted to, before we open it up to the most important part of this meeting, the questions, and hopefully answers for you. And I can assure you, if we can't give you answers, we will go back and find answers for you and publish them at a later date. Because that's really the purpose of this meeting, is to provide you with information tonight. But before that, what I wanted to do is just give you a brief overview of where we are today, how we got here, and where we're going tomorrow, which really lies in the hands of you. This is a project that the board felt was very important. I felt was very important. In fact, this was before you last year when the documents were changed, they were modified, amended, and we went through the same process, and ultimately the votes that came in were not quite enough for them to pass. So this is the second go-around to try to update your CC&Rs, your covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and your bylaws. The vote didn't pass because not enough people voted. The overwhelming majority in the 90-plus percentile, over 90%, villagers that voted in favor of these documents, but there wasn't a quorum of ballots that were returned to allow us to count the votes and to determine whether the documents passed. Does that make sense? So it really comes down to a public relations campaign that gets people out and interested and engaged and comfortable to fill out and return a ballot. That's really what it is. A quorum is a half. Yeah, over a half. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, we want this time all of our hard work, all of the resources that we're putting towards this to be a worthwhile experience. And when we say worthwhile, I define worthwhile and success as these documents being passed. But again, this is in your fate. This is in your control, because at the end of the day, you, the members, dictate whether these documents will be your new documents. So with that, knowing where we've come from, if you look at where we are today, you're operating under documents that were prepared and approved by you, may not be you personally, but your predecessor, back in 2012. Actually, 2012, no, it was 2006, around there. They're 12 years old. That last time your documents were updated and amended, since then, significant changes in the law have occurred. More changes in the law within the last 10 years. I've been representing homeowners associations for 20 years. I've seen more changes in the laws in the last 5 to 10 years than there have been in 20 to 30 years going back. It's been incredible. not just in the legislature through statutory law, but case law as well. And so I'll talk about what your current documents attempt to address and the benefits to you because of these new documents as to how they address these new laws. So that's one reason why we're going forward with this campaign again, after having not gotten the right votes last year and picking it back up. I'll also talk about what changes we've made, which are clearly marked in a different color print in the copy in front of you. Those changes that are shown in red, it's called red line, where the type is a different color. Those are the exact changes that have been made since you were last asked to vote on these documents. So back in 2017, and I believe it was June when you were asked to vote on these documents, these are the same documents, but there have been some more changes between now and then. And those are clearly marked in a different color type. And so you'll know exactly what changes have been made since the last time you saw these in a ballot package. But before we get to the documents that we have in front of us, let's just continue to talk about why this is a good idea for the village and a good idea for you. Just because there's changes in the law doesn't necessarily mean that a community should go running for the hills and have anxiety about changing their documents to mirror the new laws. Whenever laws change, for the most part, the laws control. And so there's no requirement that you change your documents to match those. But when the laws change to such a significant extent as they have, it makes operating and managing a community difficult because you're looking at documents that are no longer reliable and they lose integrity because you're quoting or relying on things that are no longer applicable. So it requires you as homeowners, it requires your board as volunteers, it requires staff to know what items in your documents apply and are still operative and what items in your documents are now outdated and antiquated. So it's good every so often, it's usually around 10 years, to revisit your documents and to bring them up to date. Also, throughout the years, a community's needs change, and as your needs change, your documents should also change, and you have control over doing that, and that's what you're doing today. One significant change with respect to the village is it's matured over the years, and through maturity comes a lot of very difficult, sometimes, questions as to who's responsible to maintain, repair, replace what. And so your current documents have general provisions, for example, that discuss you being responsible for your homes and certain components, and then the association being responsible for the common areas and the exterior of the structures. But it's pretty vague in general. The current draft in front of you, you'll see you have a set of 3 documents in front of you that's been handed out tonight. You have CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, as the first document. You have bylaws, and you have a maintenance matrix. That matrix is an attempt to really bring clarity to the village for the first time ever as to who is responsible for what components in the community, component by component, broken down, separated by maintenance, repair, and replacement. 3 very separate and distinguishable actions. So that's another objective in this project too, is to bring clarity to your documents. And when I talk about documents, the CC&Rs is a legal document recorded against the village. It's like this blanket that's thrown over the village, and it attaches to all the property, including your property. Attached to that would be the maintenance matrix, and that document really controls and governs certain things that take place in the community. Who maintains what? Who repairs what? What type of insurances are required by the association? What conduct can and can't take place in the community? What obligations the board has for management and maintenance of physical property? What obligations does the board have with respect to fiscal management of money? And I can go on and on. The bylaws, that other document in front of you, that is a very separate and distinct document, which is also a legal document that governs the association, and when I say association, it's Leisure Village Association, as a corporation. Any corporation in California has to have bylaws, and those bylaws really govern it from a corporate governance standpoint. Corporate governance meaning who runs it? Volunteer directors. Who are those directors? They're volunteer members. Who are members? They're owners of property. Are there certain qualifications that have to be met before someone can become a member? Before someone can run for the board? And how many directors are there? What are their terms? How often do they meet? So those are some things that the bylaws address that we've also made further changes to. I can tell you that of the many, many reasons why these documents are good for you, there's a couple significant ones that I can assure you everybody will feel when the timing is right. In the legislature, and you have a very active board. When I say active board, they keep themselves educated, they're very hands-on. Many times in communities like this that have staff, there's this complacency and almost mentality that let's just let staff do everything. Your board is very engaged. And when I say that, I'm telling you because I'm active in legislation, I'm active in Sacramento, and your board is involved on that level. Mr. Lansing was very instrumental in getting a very, very bad law declined and successfully opposed that would have had significant negative ramifications on many communities in California. So when I say these documents are good and they're forward-thinking, you'll see in the bylaws red line changes that have been made since the last time you voted on these. And some of those changes are intended to address laws that are pending today and laws that we think will be passed within the coming years. Example, right now in Sacramento, there's a law on the governor's desk, and I'm looking at my email constantly to see if he's going to sign it or veto it. But if it passes, it would allow voting by acclamation, which means if you have 4 positions on the board open and you have 4 candidates, do you all want your money to be used to copy and print and mail ballot packages to all 2,000 plus homeowners, which costs thousands of dollars, for an election for 4 seats on the board when 4 people are running for those seats? Right now that's required. You have to do that under the current law. This new proposed law, if it passes, would allow you to just go forward with an election by acclamation and not have to go through that very expensive process. That's just one of many examples that we've made some changes to in these bylaws. Another one is electronic voting. Right now it's not permitted in California, but the legislature has been talking about it, and at some point it's going to be approved. And I have a picture of a dog that's looking at me because the screensaver, oh, there it goes. The law will change eventually that will allow voting by email, for example, or electronic voting, which again would save thousands of dollars. So we've tried to make some changes looking ahead in the future that when these laws do come into place would allow you to take advantage of them and save a lot of time and money. So with that, I will open it up for questions and answers, and we'll go from there. And to Mr. Reveles' point, after tonight, I want everybody to understand that these documents are in their draft stages. Tonight's an important part of the process that I think we have to embrace and feel good about, because what it does is it's soliciting your input and your opinions and your thoughts about these documents, which we've already gotten from last year, but maybe you've had more time to think about them, or maybe you've looked at these documents from a different perspective, or maybe you've thought of things now that you didn't before and you want to bring those forward. If for some reason you don't get a chance tonight, there's going to be many opportunities to do that through email, through the staff or management or the board. But again, this is just one step of the process that we're going to take to gather information and to eventually go back to the desk, to the boardroom, put pen to paper, prepare a final draft, and then when we feel like the time is right, we're going to put these back out to you for your formal vote. And at that point, I would really, really ask you to seriously consider helping engage in a grassroots effort, going door to door, trying to get as many people to return ballots as possible. And if you're on the fence or on the side of, well, I'm not sure I can vote for these in favor, I also ask you to really ask yourself, let's look at the greater good of a document, of any type of project like this where you're changing making changes to the governance structure of a community or the framework of a community. These changes are not changes that you're going to feel if they were passed tonight. For the most part, the changes that are being made are going to help simplify the way the community is run. Hopefully it's going to help save money. Hopefully it's going to clarify what already exists, who's responsible for drain lines, things like that. And hopefully it will help prevent and eliminate conflict and risk. So when I say changes, these documents aren't changing the current structure, they're clarifying. What I asked you though, you're probably going to find, at least a couple of you, some areas where you may not agree or feel comfortable. It's very difficult to try to make everybody happy with everything in a document project like this. The approach that I like to talk about is stepping back. Are the benefits of this project so great that it outweighs whatever areas I may not feel 100% comfortable with? And if the answer is yes, then I think that's a good reason to vote in favor of these. So with that, yeah, with that, if you have any questions and you have a card to hold up, we'll go ahead and go around and take those questions. In the meantime, while we're doing that, I'm going to read a couple of emails that have come in already through townhall@leisurevillage.org. Bob, do you want me to say the names of the emails? Okay. So the first two emails that came in. Yeah. This is not one. Came in from Ross Edmonds, 2313 Village 20. Two questions. The first is, I would like to know if each director has read, understood, and agreed with the proposed governing documents.
Many times.
I hear many times is the answer.
Can I speak for the board?
Yeah.
If I could speak for the board, they've studied these many times, and I think we've got it to the point now they wouldn't have this meeting tonight if they didn't agree with them.
And I know the board's spent many hours on these documents without me, but even with me present, I can personally attest to having spent a lot of time walking through these documents with the board. Mr. Edmonds' second question is, at the bottom of page 3 of the maintenance responsibility matrix, there are 2 items that describe the responsibility for water lines, but do not discuss the responsibility for backflow devices. I have 2 valves, one before the backflow device and one after. I believe all houses are similar. That leaves the responsibility for the backflow device is very unclear and debatable. I suggest that this ambiguity be cleared up on the matrix so there's no question about who is responsible for the devices. And we will certainly make that change. It's a very good point. And that's the input that's really valuable in this process. So thank you, Mr. Edmonds. Okay, and that's it for the email questions at this point. Let's go forward with the cards. Can we change the quorum needed to 30% for the future? Right now, the quorum is a majority of all members. A quorum is a number that's assigned to hold a meeting. So, in other words, in order to hold an official meeting, you have to have a certain number of homeowners present, either in person or by ballot, to even hold a meeting. So right now it's a majority. The question is, can we change that to 30%? And the answer is absolutely. You can change that. I have clients that have no quorum requirement for elections, but for everything else, there's a quorum. Some communities have 25%, some communities have 51, some have 50. Really, the quorum is what it states in the bylaws. Right now, the way it's drafted, it's a quorum is a majority, and this question is, can it be changed to 30? And the answer is yes. And because we have this card, we'll take that back to the table and discuss that. Frankly, my position is, my personal opinion, it all depends on history. If you have difficulty reaching quorum, I think now's the time to seriously consider reducing that. If you don't, then I'd say you just leave it. Next question is, oh, and I'm sorry, that question was from Donna Siri. Next question is from Robert Malinow. Article 8, Section 8.2 of the CC&Rs. Article 8, Section 8.2 defines business or commercial activity. Who would enforce this? What are the penalties? It's a great question. The board of directors would enforce this, and the penalties range from monetary fines to suspension of common area use privileges to worst case scenario. There's always the unfortunate option when it becomes necessary, a lawsuit to get a court order from a judge ordering someone to comply with the CC&Rs. Those are really the three primary enforcement mechanisms. Okay. And let me add to that, because this is a very good question. Mr. Malinow refers to section Article 8, Section 8.2 as defining businesses. If you look at your current CC&Rs and you look at these new proposed ones, your current CC&Rs have general, again, the whole theme of this project since I started is the board wants to try to take very general documents that are loosey-goosey and make them very specific so we all know in the village what the expectations are, not just of the homeowners, but of the board and management and staff. This is an example because in your current documents, it says the homes can be used only for residential purposes only. But what does that mean? Does that mean if I'm at home and I'm a CPA and I'm doing tax returns, I don't have clients coming over, I don't have customers, I don't have frequent deliveries, and I'm just working via my computer? Does that mean I'm violating? No, you can have certain home-based businesses and passive businesses, and that's allowed under the city municipal code. So in the new documents, it's pretty specific as to what's permitted and what's not permitted as to commercial activity in your unit. Okay, here's another question. Is there a difference between hazard insurance and an HO6 policy? And this is from Lindy Stein. Very good question. I am by no means an insurance agent, but I know, and I don't know the terminology, so I'm qualifying this. An HO6 policy is a homeowner 6 policy, and that policy is only available to homeowners like you when you have attached dwellings where the association maintains the exteriors. That policy provides you with a lot of protection as an individual. A lot of people in your situation think that they can just rely on the association's insurance and and not purchase an HO6 policy. All homeowners should have an HO6 policy. If you're forced out of your unit, your home because of water damage, it covers alternative living expenses, it covers your personal property. If you have an earthquake endorsement on that policy, and the association suffers earthquake damage and has to specially assess you to pay the deductible. Do you have earthquake insurance? Bob, do you have, Chuck, you do? So you have earthquake insurance. Not to slight anybody in the earthquake industry or the insurance industry, but a lot of insurance comes with a price, especially earthquake insurance, and there's a big deductible. Someone's got to pay that deductible. If you don't have the operating funds, then it's a special assessment. Your HO6 policy would cover that special assessment if you have an earthquake endorsement. Hazard insurance, I believe, is casualty insurance, property damage insurance. That's what the association maintains. That policy covers the structures. That policy would cover any type of loss that's covered under that policy resulting in damage to the structure. If that damage went into your home and caused damage to your sofa and personal property and you were forced to move out during repairs, the association's insurance policy wouldn't cover that. Your HO6 policy would. And that's the distinguishment between those policies. But again, I would definitely consult with an insurance agent. Here's another question. This is from, Lou Capadonna. Hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. Will these updated documents lower our exposure to claims and lawsuits by correcting any outdated and/or contradictions or ambiguities in the old documents? Can that lower our liability insurance premiums? Great question. And in my 20 years of experience, my strong opinion and answer is yes. Many things do that in these documents. The one major tool is that matrix in the back of the CC&Rs, that third document that you have, the small, thin document. Because that really educates not just the board and staff and you, the homeowners, but the insurance companies. When they're called because of a claim, they send their adjusters in here, and a lot of times there's conflict between the adjusters and what their position is and our position or your position as a homeowner because of the ambiguity. With documents that provide a lot more guidance and direction on who's responsible for what, really manages that risk significantly. Okay. This is from Larry Schwartz. Is there a schematic or clear definition of where the lot line is included in these documents? Didn't see it. If not, where can I find one? I believe those are the plans. Bob, this question has to do with the lot line of the homes. A lot line is the actual property line, which can only be absolutely determined by a physical survey. You hire surveyors and they have those orange vests and they go out and they actually physically mark property lines. These documents don't do that, but what the documents do is reference the property of the owners, your separate interests, which are lots, LOTS, which is defined in your grant deed. That's really where the property line is defined, not in these documents. In your grant deed, yes. These documents cannot define each of your properties and each of your respective lot lines, or else it would probably be several thousand pages long. It'd be your grant deed. But there are...
Legal descriptions in there is all that's attached to the CC&R.
Yeah, there's a legal description for the entire community.
Well, it's also individual.
For each separate lot?
Yeah, I believe so. No? No. It's like 16 pages long.
Yeah, I didn't think it was for...
It's in sections, actually, the way it's done, right?
That has the sections, but then each section has the track maps.
I'll look into it, though, and get back to Larry.
6 inches from the building? No. No, it's not. You'd have to survey it.
Yeah, that would vary. The question was, is it 6 inches from the building, 2 feet? We don't know. It just depends.
Yeah. Beverly said they have those dimensions are on the track maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have to go to the county.
Physical descriptions of property lines would be on the grant deed and the track maps. Any other cards, questions? Oh. Okay. And we're still taking emails. townhall@leisurevillage.org. And if you really want to get sharp and you have a smartphone, or you can borrow Ted's laptop, you can give us a card while at the same time you send us an email. You can get double duty. All right, no emails. Whoop. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. This is from Sandra Gutman. What does doorstep on the matrix mean? Also on the matrix regarding slabs, is there no situation in which an issue here would be the responsibility of the HOA? So, Bob, I'll defer to you because I'm just a lawyer. I don't. What is a doorstep in the village?
In some of the homes, as you walk out the front door, there's like a raised concrete step, basically, and there's a little patio cover over it. That's its doorstep. That would be considered the doorstep. Not all the models have it, but I know there's some that do have that particular situation. What was the other part of it?
If there's any situation where the association would be responsible for the slab.
For which slab? You mean the house slab? You maintain the slab in the back of your home, but if it cracks or damaged, the association would replace it. If that's
Bob?
just hang on a minute, please. What is it? Depends on the context here. Lot resident components. That's the slab they're speaking of in the matrix is the home slab inside the house. Yeah. Yeah, because I know the patios are exclusive use common area. It's your responsibility to maintain it, but if it cracks like a tree root or something would split it in half or damage it, the association would replace it. Okay, the slab they're speaking of in the matrix is your home slab inside the house. Okay? Yes, the homeowners are responsible for that, yes.
And that's the same now.
Yeah. That's
And that's not changing anything. The current maintenance scheme requires homeowners to maintain their own slabs. Here's another question. This is from James Murchie, I believe. Question 1, is maintenance matrix based on new CCNRs? And the maintenance matrix is going to be attached to the new CCNRs.
It's in the phone book now.
So
It's a rule now.
yeah, right now it's a rule.
Yeah, it's just there's some clarifications to it, yeah.
No material changes, as in shifting responsibility. It's just clarifying.
Like the backflow device is a good example. We'll add that to it because that wasn't defined specifically in the matrix, and it should be, which is we own the backflow devices.
Yeah. And on this matrix, just a point of order here. Whenever you look at the topics or the components on the left, look at the title at the very top, because that will tell you where these components are. So for example, for the slab question, if we're talking about slabs under the lot residence components, that's your slab. If we're talking about slabs under the common area section, it'd be the association's common area slabs. So that helps too. Mr. Murchie's second question is, why did the last vote fail? And the last vote failed because we didn't reach quorum. Not enough homeowners turned in ballots. Of all the ballots we did receive, we had over 95% vote in favor of the documents. But we just didn't have enough ballots to actually hold a meeting officially. That's right. Right now, in order to even consider changing your CCNRs, you have to have a supermajority of the homeowners approve these new documents, the CCNRs.
Oh, what percentage that is?
That's 2/3%. We didn't even have a quorum, but in California, thank you. In California, if a majority of the homeowners, vote in favor of these new documents, And we don't get the supermajority we need because of apathy, because people just aren't returning ballots. Then we can fill out a very simple application, file it with the Superior Court, and the Superior Court will approve the document based on it not passing because of voter apathy. And that's the direction you'll probably end up going if we don't get enough votes to meet that supermajority. Because from past experience, a significant majority of the voter turnout voted in favor of these documents. We just didn't get the response that we needed. Questions are really coming in now. Must have said something wrong. Okay. Here's a question from Larry Schwartz regarding the bylaws, page 29, indemnification of association by owner. Where's the section that indemnifies owners for damage caused by association? That's just, this is, the section you're looking at is just California law. The Corporations Code is very clear that the homeowners association run by volunteers, the volunteers are indemnified with respect to any claims.
What about employees? What if there's damage done by an employee?
With respect to the second part of the question, what indemnifies owners for damage caused by the association? Judges and juries. Because if someone is damaged by something that's caused by the association, either through the employees or the board, and that is not paid for, then your remedy is going to the courts. Just like the other way around. If, let's say, a director is sued for doing something as a volunteer and they didn't do anything wrong, and the law says they're entitled to have their attorney's fees paid because they're a volunteer, and the association doesn't pay those legal fees, that director can go to court and force the association to pay their legal fees as a volunteer. So it's really an ultimate person or entity that would provide you with some kind of relief would be the courts.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
If you have any insurance questions, Denise Sutton's phone number is inside the phone book with Tolman and Weicker. She's our broker. You need to speak with her. She'll give you all the detailed information you want on those particular questions. Thank you.
Here's a question by, I believe, I apologize, is it Karen Long? Okay, thank you. When discussing the slabs question, a comment was made about patio slabs being covered by the HOA for repairs. Is that true? Patio slabs?
No, not repairs. Replacements. They have to maintain it.
Homeowners maintain the patio slabs, like keeping it broom clean.
Right, because it's exclusive use common area. And if it's damaged to the point, that it has to be replaced, the association will replace it. But it's your responsibility to maintain it. One of the problems with this matrix is that the insurance responsibilities aren't on there, and we didn't want to put them in there because they change so regularly. We don't put them in the in our governing documents. So in the phone book, we're going to put the same matrix in there, but we're going to put another column in for insurance responsibilities. I think that'll help everybody a lot as far as who's responsible for what.
Don't go far. James Ranji, I believe?
Jim Runch, yeah.
Jim Runch. Question. Why is the structure footing, homeowner responsibility? Without footings, there would be no walls. HOA is responsible from outside stucco to inside drywall.
They are insurance-wise, but not maintenance-wise. Maintenance-wise, you're responsible from the inside of the stucco, inside of the stucco in is your maintenance responsibility, but insurance responsibility is from the drywall in. Does that make sense? No? Okay, so the maintenance responsibilities are different than the insurance responsibilities. Maintenance responsibility from the inside of the stucco in, which includes the studs, the wiring, the plumbing, all of that is the owner's responsibility to maintain. If the house burned down, they would build the house back, and the insurance would cover from the texture on the drywall out. Everything, so everything inside, the paint in, would be your responsibility to be insured. Is that better? Yes. Okay. Paint on the wall. On the inside. It would confuse me too. We've had two major fires. They're total guts, basically, or three actually, and I was confused with that too. I said, the owners are responsible for the windows. They said, yeah, to maintain the windows, but if there's a fire, it's covered in the fire insurance. So you basically turn the house upside down. Everything that falls out is insured by your HO6 policy. Everything else is the association's responsibility, insurance-wise. And that's your insurance policy, by the way.
Don't go too far. So remember what you own. This is difficult because if you get someone just driving through the community that's not really familiar with the village's structure and framework, they look at the homes and think, oh, these are townhomes. These are the condos. They're attached, and the association maintains 90% of the property. But that's not the case, because in a townhome/condo, the association maintains a lot, but the owners own everything together, shared ownership. Here, there's no shared ownership. You own your home completely. From the dirt it sits on, through the structure and up to the sky. You own no different than a single family home. You're just stuck together. And because you're stuck together, the developer and the city wanted a homeowners association to step in to maintain the structures, the exteriors. And that sometimes conflicts with expectations, because you'd think that the association would maintain even the foundations. But that's your structure. You own that slab that's sitting on the dirt. You own the footings. You own the framing. You own all that, and you're responsible for it. If it starts deteriorating because of time, then you're responsible to maintain it. But if it's damaged, and that damage is covered by the insurance, because you're all paying into that insurance, that would be covered, and you'd be covered for that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And,
I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
Don't feel bad because the city doesn't understand it either, actually. The city of Camarillo, we've gone around circles many times. And like I said, if we put the insurance portion of this into the matrix, I think it'll really clarify everything for everyone, make it a lot simpler.
So that discussion we just referred to, Ken Haxton's question about the foundations. And I just heard someone from the audience, which is related, so I'll hit on that, ask, well, what about the roofs? Why are the roofs different?
Why are they different?
Yeah.
That's just something that the governing documents had said that we were going to maintain. So we maintain the roofs. On a normal planned development like this, the roofs belong to the owners. Everything belongs to the owners. So does the grass in their front yard and the backyard and the stucco and everything else. But this is a planned development, and it's insured as a condominium because of the shared walls. We do have 50 single-family homes as well, but it doesn't matter. It's insured as a condominium. That's why the airspace inside, normally you'd have to cover everything. In a traditional planned development, you'd be responsible for everything, as well as fire. You'd have your own fire insurance, basically. All they take care of usually is just the curbs and the streets and the green belt areas and maybe the gates, like a Del Webb, for instance.
Can I make one additional comment? I'd like to point out that while many of these questions are very valid to homeowners to know the answers to, most of these are still the same under the existing documents as they are under the new documents. So they're good questions and they're worthwhile knowing, but we're not changing anything major that would have shifted responsibilities that you didn't have before.
That's a great point. So the matrix in your phone book is still the matrix that applies today, which would be the same matrix that would apply if these documents pass, but with more specificity and elaboration. And I think the easiest way to think about this whole structure is you maintain everything in your home except the exterior surfaces and the roofs, and a couple other things. But it's pretty broad with respect to how much you really maintain. And again, I think the more we talk about maintenance responsibility, the more you'll learn that what we're talking about already exists, and these components that are broken down is just really taking it apart and disassembling your structure to make it clear who's responsible for what. Okay, we have Jan Perkel. Do we know percentage of rentals? How can vote be affected by non-resident ownership? How will non-resident owners receive information regarding proposed changes? Very good question. Do we know the percentage of rentals?
9%.
9%.
It's never gone over 10, as long as I've been here 12 years.
It's interesting because
The other problem is, it's not really a problem, but when a unit is when a unit has a family member living in it, it's considered owner occupied. It's not considered a rental. And we have a huge amount of those. You know, the uncle or aunt or grandma and grandpa, the kids buy the unit for them or whatever the case might be. But we send all this, these have to go to the off-site owners as well. We have to mail a copy of the governing documents to every person that's eligible to vote. And that covers everybody that's off-site as well, which is, I think there's like 500, I believe, somewhere in that range. Here, we got another question.
okay. This is Diana Rice.
It's actually the same question I was asking you instead of problem.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
This is a comment that Ted made about the corporations code. He mentioned it a little bit about.
I
Some of
can't.
these changes are related to the corporations code
Okay,
as well.
okay. The discussion we had previously about the immunity for volunteer directors, there's a whole body of law in the civil code and the corporations code that provides protections to homeowners and to volunteers in communities. That protection applies not just to your board, but to all committee members as volunteers. So long as they don't do anything intentional, like punch someone in the nose, if they're just doing their job, just performing the functions as any normal volunteer would perform, and someone just sues them because they want to sue someone, they're immune from liability. The association can still get sued, but those individual volunteers cannot. Those laws are just carried over into the CCNRs and bylaws, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Here's another question. This is from Briars, Manchester, I believe. In the matrix, lot, L-O-T, which is your property, lot/resident components, slabs, there's no mention of replace or repair of water lines under the slabs.
This is the homeowner's responsibility.
That's the homeowner's responsibility, and I believe, is it addressed in the matrix? I thought it was.
It is, yes. Yeah, water lines are, yes. No, it's the same as it's been.
So that remains the same. Homeowners are still responsible for their water lines, whether they're under your slabs or not, when they're serving your property. Good question. All right, here's a, that's it. We already read this one. Any others? Have a card. I think we're going to go to a mic. Make it a little easier. We'll just to back up, we thought that having these cards to fill out your questions would be much more effective, because what we wanted is a clear record of the questions. So when we go back to look at preparing another draft that we're able to really accurately consider and input your suggestions. So we wanted that in writing. And if for some reason one of your suggestions is not followed, at least we have your name and reference so we can report back to you as to why. Okay, yes, you have the floor.
Yeah, my name is Joan. My name is Joan DeRico, and my question is, what's the difference between a PUD, a public unit development, and a condominium?
Great question.
And we're a condominium
You're a planned development.
plan development.
Yeah, planned unit development. So the question was, what's the difference between a PUD, which is a legal term in California for planned unit development, and a condominium complex? A planned unit development is a community where the owners own lots, LOTS, which is a form of ownership in fee simple, which means you as property owners own the dirt underneath your structure, all the way through your structure, including your structure and all of its belongings, and up into the sky. That's your ownership interest. The common area, you have no ownership interest in. The association owns this. You have a right to use it, undivided right, meaning you can't come in here one night and say, hey, this section over here is mine, I'm using it, nobody else can use it. It has to be shared use based on reasonable rules, but the association owns the common area. You own your lot. In a condominium complex, you own the airspace in your home. So you touch the wall and you touch the paint, that paint is your property and nothing else beyond that. Just the airspace and that finished surface is your property only in a condominium complex. The rest of that building, let's say you're in a building of 8 other homeowners, 8 units, you all own that building, 1/8 of an interest, shared. If it's a 100-unit complex, 1/100th of an interest. If it's 2,000, 1/2,000 of an interest in that property, including the common area. You have a ownership interest in the common area as well. It's a different form of ownership, but the confusing part about it in your community is that you share some of the characteristics of a condo complex because a lot of your structures are attached. So that means when you have an association maintain your roof, you want that association to be able to maintain insurance over that roof and the structure, because if something happens and it causes water damage in your home, you want insurance there to cover you and the association from that type of risk. Because once the association touches something in the community to maintain, there's risk and you want that insured. And it's to your protection as well. It's a great question. Here's a question from Lou Capadona. What is target date to hold the vote for the members? Okay, it's a good question. What's the date we're looking for? I would say realistically, to let this process go forward, to solicit as much input as possible, get as much traction and excitement about this, and to try to drum up as many votes, I would say a few months. But then we come around the holidays. You don't want to do it during the holidays, so it'd either be right before the holidays or maybe sometime after. I would not do it during the holidays. What's the target date for the vote count, to put it out to a vote? Yeah.
When is it going?
Right, when's it going out to a vote? I can promise you that when it does go out to vote, you won't be surprised. You'll know it's coming. Any other questions? There's still a lot of cookies left to my left. Any other points board members want to make, or Mr. Revelis?
Estelle, you have a question that you can't quite hear you.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
He wants to go over the pages.
Bring up the.
Matrix pages.
Thank you. Will it be possible to go over the metrics? Since we are all here and people
on the houses they are going to see TV. So that will be good for all of us to see what we are in charge and what the homeowner association is.
You know, it's in the phone book, right? Yeah, that's in the phone book as well. Yeah, there's not a lot of changes to it, what's in the phone book. It's just some clarifications to some of the issues that we had. And it's more about pipes and that sort of thing. Paul Damas, our compliance inspector, and Mike Undum, and I think Jerry Salas was involved too. We all went through the matrix to try to clarify, make sure we caught everything, because we can only have one shot at doing this for the next 20 years, I guess. So we want to make sure we had everything in there. Did you talk about the sign up yet?
I'm going to.
Okay. We're going to have smaller meetings, actually, and which we can really go into detail about all of the different situations and issues that you have, and we can bring people in that actually worked on the matrix to answer any of the questions that you might have. Yeah, it would be like a workshop, but we're going to do small ones. But go ahead, Bob, I'm sorry.
Okay, the couple of points I wanted to make is this has been a long, long process, going back at least 4 years. And during those 4 years, a lot of things have been shaken loose, if you will. In this most recent version, if you look at the red lines, you'll notice many changes that have been made as a result of comments coming from previous town hall meetings. One that I can think of right off the top of my head is trucks. Many people own trucks, and the old documents were very vague on trucks. So these new documents put the limit on the weight of the truck, I believe, at 1,000 pounds or 1,000 pounds carry, as opposed to the normal pickup truck that most people have. But the other point I want to make is that, as Jeff said, this is not the final version. We are going to weigh input from residents for at least the next couple of months before coming to a final version that the board will vote on in public session and then send them out for a vote. So there is plenty of time ahead to ask questions, to sign up for these smaller workshops, to submit questions via email. We want to hear your concerns. Clarifications on things like the matrix. Most of these, I believe 98% is the same as it was, but just in a different form. But there are no changes of significance there. But again, if you want to hear more, sign up for these workshops. We don't know exactly when they'll be. It'll depend on how many people sign up, and we'll give plenty of notice as to when and where. I want to thank you all for coming. Are there any other questions? Yes, Larry?
I'm sorry, just for clarification, when the new documents come out, would it be possible to delineate the changes the way they are delineated here in a different color, a different typeface, so those of us and you who have gone through these documents and spent hours on them can just look at what's blue and know that was the change?
I think we could probably do that. What shall I hold on to?
We're just talking about an astronomical amount of money to do that. To color those? Oh, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I said we'll
look
consider
into
it.
it. Yeah,
We'll look into it.
Yeah, see if we
The question is whether or not there are additional changes. If there aren't any, then it wouldn't be any point to it. If there are one or two, maybe we'll show it on a separate sheet. If it's massive, then it's another story.
Put them on the website.
we can underline it or bold it or
Yes.
something, you know.
There are ways of dealing with that. Dick, you,
You can do it on the website, it won't cost you.
Is the maintenance matrix incorporated by reference in the CCNR? If so, where is the rest of?
So the question, good question, is regarding the CCNRs. And you're asking about the proposed documents, right? Right now, your matrix is a rule, which is in your phone book. What the proposed CCNRs, what the proposed CCNRs do is attach the matrix to the back of the CCNRs, and in the CCNRs, under the maintenance section, which, bear with me, I believe is Article 9. Yes. Section 9.1, you'll see a reference to Exhibit C, which is the maintenance responsibility matrix. That is the reference that you're asking about as far as the CCNRs incorporating that matrix into that document. It also references the matrix under Section 9.2 of the CCNR's Exhibit C as well. And that article really, if you want a little guidance, like it was mentioned, you're going to have little workshops to get together and have a more intimate discussion about these documents. But when you're going through the CCNRs, that Section 9 is really one that you should flag, as well as the section after that and the section before that really addresses some very important aspects of your maintenance responsibility and what you can and can't do in the community. In fact, you know what? We have a couple emails that just came in. So let me see if we have some questions here. From Carol Moody, Village 5. Question on the CCNRs, allocation of assessments. Regarding assessments for each lot, the floor area includes garages but not patios and patio enclosures. Many so-called patio enclosures are actually room additions and encroachments on exclusive use common area space. As such, many appear to show increased square footage on the tax assessor roll. Why do those lots not have to pay increased assessments for the additional square footage?
Because it's not technically a room. Yeah, call the assessor's office. It's technically not a room. It's illegal to have a room addition in Leisure Village. It's a patio enclosure. Even though they took the windows out and they made it a room, it's still considered a patio enclosure because you're not allowed to build on exclusive use common area, which, in other words, building on it means making a permanent structure. And an enclosed patio is not considered a permanent structure. It's considered an enclosed patio. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what it is.
I hear, okay, here's a great question from, I believe, if it's the person who sent it from this email account, Julie Smith. Thank you for asking this. The process of getting new documents approved is expensive. What can we do as individuals to make sure that this vote gets enough participation to pass? Great question. You know, if you're here, if you're in clubs, if you're at social events, you're walking on the street, to the extent you can knock on doors, pass the word on, spread the word. It's really a grassroots effort. It really is. You're a village, and with that term village comes a lot of strength and numbers, and you can make this change. You really can.
So now the laws have changed, and now you can canvass. You can't solicit. You can't sell anything, but you can canvass. So you can knock on someone's door and ask them if they voted or carried the documents with you and say, would you please vote? Especially people that can't get out of their homes. But you don't have to call them anymore ahead of time. You're more than welcome to go door to door and knock on the doors.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody who came tonight. I'd like to thank everybody who watched it on TV. But before you all leave, one last reminder. If you didn't sign up for the special workshop, I'm sure if you call the office, email any director, we'll get your name on the list. We'll get the word out when those workshops will be. And believe me, we will do everything. When I say we, the board, the staff, and everybody else we can get in motion will do everything we can to get these documents in the right form and then eventually passed. Thank you very much.